In the remote town of Willowbrook, a chilling mystery unfolds. Nestled within a valley of thick, brooding woods, townspeople disappear without a trace, leaving behind a graveyard filled with empty plots, a haunting testament to their enigmatic fate. The town's whispered curse has turned Willowbrook into a prison of fear. Enter Amelia Kumbomba, an investigative journalist with an insatiable curiosity for the mysterious. Drawn to Willowbrook's cursed legacy, she embarks on a journey to the eerie town. As she ventures deeper into the valley, the atmosphere grows increasingly oppressive, the lush greenery twisting into ominous shadows. Despite the townsfolk's wariness of outsiders, they yearn for an end to their torment. They guide Amelia to a small, creaky inn, her home for the duration of her investigation. Day one commences with interviews. The locals' tales of woe send shivers down Amelia's spine. Children, parents, grandparents, all vanished on moonless, fog-ridden nights, never to return. Through her diligent inquiry, Amelia uncovers a peculiar pattern. The surname Hawthorne emerges with alarming frequency. The town's history reveals a chilling legend. Willowbrook once played host to an ancient coven of witches, among them the malevolent Evangeline Hawthorne. In a quest for eternal life, Evangeline cursed the town before vanishing herself. The curse foretold the loss of Hawthorns in every generation, a grim reminder of the witch's malevolent intent. One foggy evening, Amelia finds an anonymous note slipped under her door. It holds a map leading to the forbidden Hawthorne woods. Compelled by an unseen force, she follows the map's cryptic instructions. The woods, filled with dense, shadow-casting trees, are eerily silent. Amelia comes upon a clearing with a peculiar stone circle in the center of which stands a gnarled, ancient tree. Before she can process what's happening, the ground gives way, plunging her into a hidden chamber. In the chamber's depths, Amelia is surrounded by the ethereal forms of the missing Hawthorns. Their tortured souls are trapped in an unending cycle, each one suffering the pain of the curse's dark magic. But Amelia is undaunted. She stumbles upon an ancient grimoire detailing the curse's rituals. It reveals the tree at the stone circle's center as the embodiment of Evangeline Hawthorne's power. To break the curse, the tree must be destroyed. So begins Amelia's mission. Armed with this newfound knowledge, she vows to free the Hawthorne souls and break the curse plaguing Willowbrook. The mission is risky, the stakes high, but Amelia is determined. In the face of darkness and despair, she stands as a beacon of hope for the haunted town. As we leave Willowbrook for now, Amelia's courageous journey is only just beginning. What would you do if you were the only hope for a cursed town? Would you run away, or would you face it head-on, with every fibre of your being screaming in defiance? Picture Amelia, a lone figure against the backdrop of a gnarled and twisted tree, the very symbol of the curse that has choked the life out of the town of Willowbrook for generations. With a makeshift torch in her hand and determination in her heart, Amelia sets the tree ablaze. The fire roars to life, consuming the cursed roots and branches, screaming out the last breath of the curse that has held the town captive for so long. As the tree burns, a cacophony of wails echo through the chamber, the agonized cries of those trapped in the curse. One by one, these apparitions vanish, finally finding release from their torment. Outside the woods, the people of Willowbrook feel a sudden shift in the air. It's as if the weight of sorrow-filled generations has been lifted from their shoulders. The sun, which had been obscured by clouds for as long as anyone could remember, breaks through, bathing the town in its warm light. Amelia emerges from the woods, tired but victorious. She is met with the grateful embrace of the townspeople. The curse has been broken, and the lost Hawthorns are finally at peace. The transformation of Willowbrook is nothing short of miraculous. As news of the town's end to an unfortunate, decades-long misery spreads to nearby regions, Willowbrook transforms from a place of sorrow into one of hope. Families are no longer plagued by unexplained disappearances, and the once-forgotten community thrives once more. Amelia, having uncovered the chilling connection to the ancient curse, feels a sense of fulfillment and closure. She leaves Willowbrook, knowing that her investigation has not only solved a long-standing mystery, but has also saved a town from the clutches of darkness. Willowbrook's name is no longer synonymous with fear. It becomes a place freed from the darkest of curses. It's a testament to Amelia's bravery and the enduring spirit of a town that refused to surrender to darkness. And so, the tale of the cursed town is one of transformation and triumph, a story of how one brave soul can change the fate of an entire town.
Have you ever heard of the vengeful ghost of Matilda Birtwistle, a woman wrongfully incarcerated by her own family in the 19th century? Matilda, a woman of grace and wealth, was the unfortunate victim of her family's insatiable greed. Born into affluence, she was the beneficiary of a grand inheritance from a wealthy aunt. But her family, their eyes clouded by the glitter of gold, conspired against her. Under the guise of concern, they declared her unfit, a lunatic, and committed her to the dreary halls of the Bodmin Moor Asylum. A place of despair, where the innocent Matilda was forced to endure the torment of her unjust imprisonment. The walls of the asylum echoed with her silent cries, the cold stone bearing witness to her suffering. Her life was stolen from her, but Matilda Birtwistle was not one to let such injustice go unnoticed. Against all odds, Matilda managed to escape the grim walls of the asylum, hell-bent on revenge. With nothing more than her wits and the iron will that had kept her alive in the face of injustice, she slipped past the guards and into the cold, unforgiving night. The Bodmin Moor Asylum was behind her, but the memories of her wrongful imprisonment were as vivid as ever, fueling her desire for retribution. Matilda was not just a victim, she was a survivor, a woman wronged, with a burning desire for justice. She hunted down each of her family members, those who had conspired against her, intent on stealing her inheritance. One by one they fell, victims of the very madness they had accused Matilda of harbouring. She was ruthless yet methodical, leaving no trace of her presence, save for the chilling fear that gripped the hearts of her remaining kin. In the dead of night she would strike, a spectre of vengeance, her face hidden in the shadows. With each passing day, another family member would be found, lifeless, their eyes wide open in eternal fear. The local constabulary were left puzzled, no clues to follow, no leads to chase. All they had were the whispered rumours, the chilling tales of Matilda's revenge. Matilda was relentless, her determination unwavering. She was driven by a single purpose, to make her family pay for their betrayal. She was no longer the naive heiress they had once known. She was a force to be reckoned with, a woman fueled by wrath and injustice. Each member of her family paid dearly for their betrayal, but Matilda's story was far from over. The spectre of her vengeance still loomed large, a chilling reminder of a woman wronged, a woman who would stop at nothing to claim what was rightfully hers. As the last of her kin breathed their final breath, Matilda disappeared into the shadows, her thirst for revenge finally quenched. But the echoes of her wrathful deeds still lingered, a haunting legacy of Matilda's escape and revenge. With the law closing in, Matilda made her final escape, disguising herself as a circus performer with a travelling group. She traded the stone walls of the Bodmin Moor Asylum for the canvas of a circus tent, the iron bars for the swing of a trapeze. She swapped her prison garb for vibrant, flowing costumes, her identity for that of a performer. But her freedom was as fleeting as her performances, her past a relentless pursuer. On a cold moonlit night, Matilda boarded a ship bound for France. The journey was treacherous. The waters of the English Channel roared, the winds howled, and the ship creaked ominously. Alone, Matilda faced the wrath of the sea. And there, amidst the crashing waves and the biting cold, Matilda met her end. Her body may have succumbed to the merciless sea, but her spirit refused to be quelled. Matilda Birtwistle's life ended in tragedy, but her spectral presence can still be felt. Even in death, Matilda Birtwistle refused to be silenced. Her spectral presence, a chilling sight on the crossing from England to France, is a disturbing echo of her tormented life. Passengers have reported a wavering figure, a ghostly apparition of a woman, her hands clasping her heart, wobbling near the starboard side of the ship. It is as if she is caught in an endless loop, perpetually reliving her final moments of life. This haunting vision has become a macabre staple of the journey, a spectral passenger forever bound to the ship. Some say it's Matilda's way of ensuring her story is never forgotten, her voice never silenced. Others believe it's her eternal punishment, a ghostly reminder of the lives she took in her quest for revenge. Regardless of the interpretations, one thing remains clear. To this day, the vengeful ghost of Matilda Birtwistle continues to haunt, a chilling reminder of a life torn asunder by greed and betrayal. In the gloaming of a quiet city, our protagonist, Jake, an experienced taxi driver, finds himself bracing for another midnight shift. The evening air buzzes with an unfamiliar tension, and the city's usual clamour has dwindled to an uncanny silence. As he cruises through the city outskirts, a call pierces the quiet. A voice, barely more than a whisper, echoes through his taxi. "I need a ride." Jake's instincts tell him there's something unusual about this call, but he dismisses the feeling. "Where to?" he asks, meeting the voice's request with a question. "Just drive," comes the cryptic response, and then silence. As Jake navigates the desolate streets, a figure appears under a flickering streetlight. The figure's attire, reminiscent of a bygone era, and the chilling aura surrounding him send a shiver down Jake's spine. The figure, a man obscured by darkness and a wide-brimmed hat, enters the taxi wordlessly. Jake once again asks, "Where to?" The man responds only by pointing into the distance. As they journey into the city's unknown territories, Jake can't shake off the feeling of transporting a spectre. The eerie silence is occasionally broken by the haunting call of the wind. "Are we almost there?" Jake queries, unable to contain his growing unease. The passenger, in his ghostly whisper, replies, "Not yet. We have to make a stop first." Guided by the enigmatic passenger, Jake finds himself in a misty cemetery, its headstones weathered by time and trees resembling skeletal fingers reaching out from the ground. The passenger exits the taxi, leaving Jake to witness his strange communion with the shadows and the wind. The passenger returns and they continue their journey, driving through landscapes that increasingly resemble a twisted, spectral world. Their journey ends in a clearing with the infamous Hawthorne house looming in the distance. Jake's heart hammers in his chest as the passenger finally reveals his request. "I need you to enter the Hawthorne house with me." Jake's mind races with tales of the mansion's dark history. The request is chilling, yet the passenger's presence compels him to consider it. Tune in next time, dear listeners, as we unravel this spectral story in The Ghostly Passenger Part 2. The passenger turned to him, his face still obscured by shadows. "I have a request, and it's of the utmost importance. I need you to enter the Hawthorne house with me." Jake's eyes widened in terror. He had heard stories of the mansion's malevolent history, tales of dark rituals, strange disappearances, and restless spirits. The request was insane, but there was something about the passenger's presence that Jake couldn't refuse. "What do you want inside that place?" Jake finally managed to ask. The passenger's voice grew even colder, more haunting. "I need to retrieve a locket that contains my beloved's soul. I've been trapped in this world for centuries, and the only way to set her free is to find that locket." Despite every instinct screaming at him to flee, Jake agreed to accompany the passenger into the dreaded Hawthorne house. They ventured through the overgrown garden, crossed the creaky, decaying porch, and entered the mansion. Inside, the air was heavy with a sinister presence. Dust danced in the moonlight that filtered through cracked windows, and the walls whispered ancient secrets. Jake and the passenger navigated the darkened halls, searching for the elusive locket. As they delved deeper into the mansion's depths, the malevolent history of the place became all too clear. The house seemed alive, its walls shifting and groaning, as if it were determined to keep its secrets hidden. Ghostly apparitions flitted through the shadows, their mournful wails filling the air. Finally, the passenger stopped in front of an ornate mirror in a long-forgotten chamber. It was there, in a dusty old jewelry box, that the locket was hidden. The passenger's fingers trembled as he retrieved it. "The time has come," he said, voice heavy with emotion. "My beloved soul will finally be free." As the locket was opened, a brilliant light burst forth, illuminating the room. The spectral form of a woman, ethereal and beautiful, emerged from the locket. She gazed at the passenger with love and gratitude before fading into the moonlight. With the locket returned, the mansion's malevolence began to dissipate. Jake and the passenger made their way back to the taxi, their footsteps no longer accompanied by sinister whispers. As they drove away from the cursed mansion, the passenger seemed to grow less ghostly and more human, his features becoming clearer in the dim light. He smiled, a genuine smile that hadn't graced his face in centuries. "I can never thank you enough for your help," he said. Jake, still trembling from the night's events, managed a weak smile. "I don't know what just happened, but I'm glad I could assist you." The passenger directed Jake back to the city, and as they approached the outskirts, he simply vanished from the back seat, leaving behind only the faint scent of roses. When Jake finally reached his destination, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just experienced something beyond the realm of the living. He sat in his taxi, pondering the events of that fateful night, wondering if he had truly encountered a ghostly passenger, or if it had all been a bizarre dream. One thing was certain. Jake would never forget the supernatural journey he had embarked upon, a journey that had brought him face to face with a love that transcended time and death. In the heart of Washington state, nestled amidst the towering conifers, lies a body of water that sends chills down the spine, Shady Lake. This enigmatic expanse of water is fringed by a dark parkland, a shadowy landscape that seems to hold its breath, shrouded in an eerie silence. The trees whisper in hushed tones, their leaves rustling softly, as if afraid to disturb the tranquility of the gloom. A sense of unease is palpable here, where the moonlight barely pierces through the thick canopy, casting an otherworldly glow on the quiet water. In the parkland's darkest corners, the nutria, an uncanny creature, half rat, half possum, lurks. Its eyes flicker with an unsettling intelligence, adding to the sense of foreboding that hangs heavy over this place. It is here, in the gloom of the parkland, that our tale of guilt, madness, and redemption unfolds. Enter Mr. Kranchensteinsen, a solitary resident of the lake, who had a peculiar companion, a nutria named Nelson. Now half rat, half possum, Nelson was no ordinary pet. He was a character with a charm that matched his owner's eccentricity. But one fateful night, after a bout of drinking, Mr. Kranchensteinsen put Nelson out in the cold. A desperate Nelson sought refuge in the engine of his owner's car. The next morning, in a haze of remorse and regret, Mr. Kranchensteinsen unknowingly turned the engine on, ending Nelson's life. A pall of guilt fell over the old man. He could still hear the soft scurrying of Nelson, the rustle of his fur against the hardwood floor of their shared home. The haunting began in earnest, with Nelson's ghost appearing in the corner of his vision, a spectral reminder of the terrible mistake he'd made. Haunted by the ghost of his once engaging companion, he saw Nelson's spectre everywhere. Guilt-ridden and haunted, Mr. Kranchensteinsen's world began to crumble. You see, the spectral apparition of Nelson, the half-rat, half-possum creature, had become an incessant spectre in his daily life. The ghostly nutria, once a beloved pet, now served as a chilling reminder of a mistake made in a moment of inebriated thoughtlessness. Every shadow in the corner of his eye, every rustle in the underbrush, every squeak in the silent night, they all morphed into the haunting image of Nelson. The relentless, tormenting visions gnawed at the edges of his sanity, driving him further and further into the abyss of madness. His once lively eyes now carried a haunted look, the spark of life slowly dimming. His jovial laughter replaced with a hollow echo that bounced off the walls of his empty home. Friends and neighbours watched helplessly as he retreated into his shell, a mere shadow of his former self. Driven to the brink of madness, he made a decision that would change his life forever. Mr. Kranchensteinsen, in his bid for redemption, sold his home and made a generous donation to the Washington Parks Fund. With the proceeds, he erected a shelter, a safe haven for stray nutria who might otherwise meet a fate like Nelson's. A penance, perhaps, for his past misdeeds, a chance to provide these creatures the warmth and safety that he once denied his own companion. Yet, as altruistic as his actions were, they did not bring him peace. Quite the contrary, they seemed to amplify his torment. He continued to see Nelson, in the park, in the shelter, and most vividly in his dreams. Every nutria he saw bore the ghostly image of his old friend, each pair of beady eyes a stark reminder of his guilt. His redemption, while noble, was a double-edged sword. It was both a step towards atonement and a constant reminder of his regrettable past. To this day, Nelson visits Mr. Krankensteinsen in his dreams, a haunting reminder of a past he can never change. In the heart of London, under the shadow of Big Ben, lies a structure as ancient as the city itself. An edifice that has witnessed centuries of history, holding countless secrets within its time-worn walls. Welcome, dear listener, to the old St. Thomas Hospital. The story we unravel today, found on an engaging Reddit thread, is a tale that intertwines the mundane with the macabre, set in the labyrinthine corridors of this very hospital. In the late 1950s, a young nurse named Margaret had just started her career at Old St. Thomas. Fresh from nursing school, her heart was full of compassion, and her mind brimming with medical knowledge. Little did she know, she was about to witness events that no textbook had prepared her for. It was a night like any other when Margaret was assigned to the oldest wing of the hospital. As the moon hung high, illuminating the foggy streets of London, Margaret began her rounds. The flickering fluorescent lights cast long, eerie shadows in the deserted hallway. A sudden chill ran down her spine, but she dismissed it as a trick of her mind. As Margaret made her way down the corridor, she heard a soft humming sound. She followed the melody to room 205. Inside, she found an elderly patient named Mrs. Hudson, humming an old lullaby to herself. Mrs. Hudson was a sweet old lady who always had a warm smile for everyone, but tonight there was a strange emptiness in her eyes. Margaret asked Mrs. Hudson why she was humming so late at night. The elderly lady replied, "I'm not humming, dear, it's the children." Margaret was taken aback. There were no children in that wing of the hospital. But before she could question further, Mrs. Hudson fell into a deep sleep. Days turned into weeks, and every night the humming from room 205 continued. Margaret grew increasingly disturbed, but there was no explanation for the mysterious sounds. Until one night, a cold gust of wind blew through the hospital, and with it came the horrifying truth. As Margaret approached room 205, she saw a group of children standing by Mrs. Hudson's bed, humming the same lullaby. But these were no ordinary children. They were translucent, ethereal, their eyes glowing in the dim light. Margaret stood frozen in terror as the ghostly children slowly turned to look at her before vanishing into thin air. From that night onwards, Margaret never heard the humming again. Mrs. Hudson passed away peacefully a few days later. The hospital records revealed a chilling fact. Room 205 used to be the children's ward in the early 1900s, and many young lives were lost there due to a deadly epidemic. The tale of Margaret and the ghostly children remains one of the most chilling stories of Old St. Thomas Hospital, a haunting reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. So, dear listener, as we conclude our journey through the ancient corridors of Old St. Thomas Hospital, remember, sometimes the walls do talk, and when they do, they whisper stories of the eerie past. Stories that remind us that sometimes the scariest monsters are not those under our beds, but the ones lurking in the corners of our history.
In the heart of a serene suburban neighborhood, a seemingly ordinary house stands with a secret. Its blue paint, faded by time, and a charming white picket fence do little to betray its dark history. This, dear listeners, is the house on Cedar Avenue, the subject of whispered rumors and hushed stories, standing vacant for more years than anyone can recall. Enter Sarah Hastings, a young journalist with a thirst for the unknown. Drawn to the house by its solitude and inexplicably low rent, she shrugged off the whispers of her neighbors, their sympathetic glances and hushed words. The unknown to Sarah was not a threat, but an intriguing mystery. As Sarah found her rhythm in this peculiar house, she began to delve into its past. The antique furnishings and faded wallpaper held an eerie charm that she couldn't resist. Her days turned into nights, lost in the folds of history and the captivating mystery of her new home. One stormy evening, buried in the dusty archives of the local library, Sarah discovered a chilling tale. It was a newspaper article yellowed with age that painted a haunting picture of the house's former residents, the Andersons, who vanished without a trace. The article spoke of a frantic 911 call made from the house, a call filled with terror and tales of otherworldly occurrences. But when the authorities arrived, the house stood empty. The Andersons, it seemed, had disappeared into the ether. This revelation sent a chill down Sarah's spine. The midnight caller. The phrase echoed in her mind, spurring her to dig deeper, to uncover the truth hidden in the shadows of her home. Sarah's investigation led her down a winding path. She studied old records, interviewed longtime residents, and scoured the local archives. Each piece of the puzzle brought her closer to the truth, painting a haunting picture of the Andersons. The couple, it seemed, had been paranormal enthusiasts, dabbling in seances and the occult. They believed they could communicate with the dead and sought to harness the supernatural. Their young daughter, Emily, was an innocent bystander, caught in the chilling crossfire of their experiments. As Sarah delved further, she unearthed a series of letters written by Emily. The letters spoke of terrifying apparitions, of voices whispering in the night, and a constant feeling of being watched. The tales were spine-chilling, painting a vivid picture of a family living on the edge of the supernatural. In the end, Sarah had uncovered the chilling history of her home. The house on Cedar Avenue had been a battleground, a place where the Andersons had toyed with forces beyond their understanding. Their story was a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers lurking in the unknown. And so, as Sarah closed the chapter on the Andersons, she couldn't help but feel a chill crawl up her spine. The house on Cedar Avenue may have seemed ordinary, but its walls held stories that were anything but.
It was a cold, stormy night when John Thornton found himself stranded in a remote, antiquated inn nestled deep within the heart of the English countryside. The inn was old, its time-worn wooden beams creaking with every gust of wind that rattled the windows. The place had an eerie aura about it, and John couldn't help but feel a shiver down his spine as he checked in. The innkeeper, a grizzled old man with watery eyes, handed him an old-fashioned key. "You'll be staying in room 13, he muttered, with a hint of a warning in his voice. John glanced at the key, its brass tarnished with age, and offered a polite nod. As he climbed the creaking wooden staircase, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows on the walls, he couldn't help but wonder why the innkeeper had hesitated. Room 13's door groaned open, revealing a chamber that seemed to belong to another century. Heavy, moth-eaten curtains blocked out most of the moonlight, and the room was filled with antique furniture covered in dust sheets. A massive four-poster bed dominated the room, draped with faded, frayed curtains. Despite its gloomy appearance, John was too tired to be picky. He closed the door and threw his bag onto the bed, then set about lighting the gas lamp. As the room slowly illuminated, he caught sight of a painting hanging above the fireplace. It depicted a striking woman, her pale face framed by dark, cascading hair, her eyes seemingly following his every move. John couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Ignoring his discomfort, he decided to get some rest after a long day of travel. He slipped under the heavy covers, but sleep did not come easily. The wind outside howled like a banshee, and strange, indistinct whispers seemed to dance on the air. John dismissed them as mere products of his tired mind, but the unease persisted. Hours passed, and John awoke with a start. The room was bathed in an eerie blue light, casting strange, shifting shadows on the walls. He blinked in confusion, unable to discern the source of the light. As his eyes adjusted, he realized that the ghostly glow emanated from the portrait above the fireplace. The woman in the painting had come to life. Her dark eyes bore into his soul, and her lips parted as if to speak. John couldn't tear his gaze away from her, his heart pounding in his chest. "You shouldn't have come here," she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with sorrow. "Why?" John stammered, unable to look away. "This inn, it's cursed," she murmured, her image growing fainter with each word. Before John could ask for more information, the painting returned to its lifeless state, and the room was plunged into darkness once again. He fumbled for the gas lamp, finally managing to relight it. His heart was still racing, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. When morning finally arrived, he couldn't get out of room 13 fast enough. He stumbled downstairs and confronted the innkeeper, demanding an explanation. He leaned against the worn wooden counter, resting his head in his left hand. The old man sighed heavily. "You're not the first to experience the whispers of room 13, he confessed. "The woman who sometimes materializes, that's Lady Evelyn. She was a tragic figure, cursed to haunt this inn after her untimely death." The innkeeper refused to elaborate any further, sensing his guest was upset enough. "She warns guests to leave before it's too late." Chilled to the bone, John gathered his belongings and hurriedly checked out of the inn. As he left, he couldn't help but glance back at the window of room 13. He saw Lady Evelyn's ghostly figure outlined as if backlit by a light, strange with the morning light evident around him, her spectral hand reaching out as if to say one final goodbye. The haunting whispers of room 13 would stay with John for the rest of his life, a spine-crawling reminder of the night he encountered a curse he could never forget. As he drove away from the cursed inn, John couldn't help but wonder about the tragic fate of Lady Evelyn and the secrets held within that room. The spooky encounter would remain etched in his memory, a story he would share with others, but one that would also leave him with lingering questions about the mysteries of the past. Unable to shake off his encounter with Lady Evelyn, John decided to dig deeper into her tragic past. He spent hours scouring through local library archives, online records, and even managed to get his hands on a few dusty old books that told tales of the inn's checkered past. His determination paid off when he stumbled upon a hidden truth. Lady Evelyn was not just a guest at the inn, she had been brutally murdered by a jealous lover who, as it turned out, was the innkeeper's ancestor. The tale grew darker as he read further. The lover, in a fit of rage, had killed her in room 13, where her spirit was believed to be trapped forever. She warned guests of the danger that befell her, forever echoing her plight through the whispers that filled the room. The tragic tale of Lady Evelyn added a chilling layer to John's experience, making the whispers of room 13 even more haunting.